When I was 17, I didn't know what credit was. I thought it was some adult magic, like taxes or mortgages, or why my dad could yell at the TV during football, and somehow that was normal. My name is Tyler, and I'm 25 now. I've learned a lot since then. I've learned how to fix a busted radiator with a $9 socket set in a YouTube video at midnight. I've learned how to juggle 3 jobs without falling asleep standing up. And I've learned, painfully, piece by piece, that family doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes, it means debt collectors and betrayal wrapped in Sunday dinner smiles. Back then, we lived in a weather-beaten house just outside Fort Wayne. Indiana winters are cruel, and that house held the cold like a grudge. My room was in the attic. No insulation, one tiny window, and a floor that groaned like it was tired of holding me up. But I didn't complain. That was the unspoken rule in our house. Don't complain. Ever. My parents, Scott and Denise, were the kind of people who believed struggle built character, as long as it wasn't theirs. They saved their sympathy for outsiders and their expectations for me. I was the oldest of 3. My brother Kyle, 2 years younger, had a natural charm that got him out of almost everything. Teachers adored him even when he turned in assignments late. My sister Haley, the youngest, was the princess from birth. Blonde curls, blue eyes, a voice that could switch from sweet to shrill in a heartbeat. She got what she wanted by sheer force of will. I was the quiet one, the one who fixed the Wi-Fi, mowed the lawn, and helped with groceries without being asked. The reliable one. I used to take pride in that. Until it broke me. The first sign that something was off came just after my 19th birthday. I was working part-time at a mechanic shop, saving money for community college. Every paycheck, I'd squirrel away a few $100s, hoping to cover tuition without loans. I didn't want to start adulthood in debt. Irony has a twisted sense of humor. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail, thick envelope, official-looking. I opened it at the kitchen table while Mom stirred spaghetti sauce and Kyle shouted at the Xbox upstairs. It was from a bank I didn't recognize. I skimmed it, confused, then read it again slower. My name. My social security number. A loan for $22,000. Approved and disbursed. I thought it was a mistake. A scam, maybe. I stood there, stunned, letter in hand. Mom, I said, did you sign me up for a loan? She didn't turn around. Just kept stirring. Don't make a scene, Tyler. What? My voice cracked. This says I took out a loan. 22 grand. I didn't. What is this? She sighed, like I was being difficult on purpose. Finally, she turned to face me, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Your father and I had to use your name. We needed help, and the bank wouldn't approve us anymore. I just stared. I felt like the floor had shifted under me. You used my name? It's not a big deal, she said quickly, eyes narrowing. You're part of this family, and we needed a loan to consolidate some things. Kyle needed braces. Haley's school trip. Some house repairs. But it's in my name. You're 19, Tyler. You'll have plenty of time to build credit again. My mouth opened and closed. I didn't even know what to say. I felt violated, betrayed, confused. I'd always trusted my parents. Always believed they were doing their best. But this was something else. This was stealing. When Dad came home that night, I tried to bring it up again. He didn't let me finish a sentence. You live under our roof, he said. You think that's free? You think feeding you all these years didn't cost money? I'm not saying that, I whispered. But this ruins my credit. I was going to apply for financial aid. For college. We'll figure it out, he said, already brushing past me. Don't make a scene. It's for the family. That became the mantra, the shield they used whenever I protested. It's for the family. Like I wasn't part of it. Like I was just the body they used to get ahead. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my boss, not even my girlfriend at the time. I swallowed it, because what else could I do? I thought maybe they'd pay it off fast. Maybe they'd fix it. Maybe I could still save for school. A year later, they took out another one. I found out when I applied for a student credit card and got denied. Another letter came in the mail. This one for a $15,000 personal loan. Same bank. Same story. My name, my number, their hands. That night, I confronted them. I was shaking, not with fear, but rage I didn't know how to process. I laid the letter on the table, waited. Dad barely glanced at it. We needed it. For what? I asked. Kyle's car. His broke down. He needs to get to work. What about Haley's wedding fund? Mom added. We've been saving, but it's not enough. You know how expensive venues are now. My vision went blurry. So my future just doesn't matter? You're young, Mom said again, as if that was some kind of shield. You'll bounce back. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But instead, I just stood there while they moved on like nothing had happened. Dad turned on the TV. Mom started folding laundry. And I felt myself crack a little. That was the night I decided something. I didn't say it out loud, but it settled in my bones like concrete. I was done waiting for them to do right by me. I was going to fix this, but not for them. For me. What I didn't know then was how deep the hole really went. Because the loans were just the start. And my parents weren't nearly done using me. The summer I turned 21, I learned the sound of my breaking point. It didn't come with shouting or some big dramatic outburst like in the movies. No, it was quiet, almost polite. Just the soft click of my car being towed from the front of the mechanic shop where I worked, right after my shift ended. I stood there, greasy and sunburned, holding a bottle of orange Gatorade and a bag of gas station chips. I thought maybe I parked in the wrong spot. Maybe there was a mistake. But when I called the number on the flyer the driver had slapped onto the shop door, the woman on the other end asked for my name, put me on hold, then came back with a bored voice and said, "Yeah, looks like it was repossessed. Missed payments. Loan defaulted." I just stood there for a full minute, silent. I didn't take out a loan for that car. I finally said, heart thudding, "I bought it used cash." Another pause. Then, "Well, sir, according to our records, the vehicle was used as collateral in a personal loan 2 years ago. It defaulted. That's why it was taken." I don't remember the rest of that call. I remember the ground feeling soft, unsteady. I remember walking home, 5 miles, in steel-toed boots. My boss texted me asking what happened. I didn't answer. I didn't have words for what I was feeling. When I got home, Kyle's new silver Civic was parked in the driveway. Shiny, spotless, not a scratch. It hadn't been there that morning. I stared at it for a long time before I walked inside. The air was thick with the smell of garlic bread and lasagna. Haley was laughing in the kitchen, probably on the phone with her fiancé, and my mom was humming as she pulled dinner from the oven. Dad sat on the couch with a beer in hand, eyes glued to the news. I didn't even ask. I just held up the flyer and dropped it onto the table. Mom looked over, smile fading. "What's that?" "My car got taken," I said flatly. "Repossession. Apparently, it was used as collateral for a loan." She winced. "Tyler." "No," I said. "No more Tyler. No more brushing it off. Did you take out a loan in my name again?" Silence. Then Dad set his beer down with a loud thud. "Don't come in here accusing us like we're criminals." "You are," I snapped. "You used my name. Again. You didn't even ask." "We needed a loan to help Kyle get a reliable car," Mom said, folding her arms like that justified it. "His old one kept breaking down, and he's got a real chance at that sales job." "What about me?" I asked, voice rising. "What about my job? I was using that car to get to work, to earn money, to survive, and now it's gone." Dad stood up. "Don't raise your voice. We're still your parents." "Parents?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Parents don't steal their kid's identity 3 times and ruin their credit before he can legally drink." Haley poked her head in from the kitchen. "You're being dramatic." That was it. That was the moment. Not the loans. Not the repossession. Not even the smug way Kyle acted like he earned that Civic. It was Haley, looking at me like I was the problem. "You know what?" I said. "Fine. I'll find a way to fix it. But don't expect me to play along anymore." "Don't be selfish," Mom snapped. "We're a family. We help each other." "Funny how that only goes one way," I muttered. I walked out that night and didn't come back for 3 days. I slept on a friend's couch and borrowed his bike to get to work. I didn't return until I was sure I wouldn't scream just walking through the front door. When I did get home, nobody greeted me. My parents acted like I was being petty. Kyle had the nerve to say, "You're still mad about the car? Dude, chill. I'll drive you if you need a ride." I declined. That month, I opened a separate bank account under a different name, my middle name, and an old address from college applications. I started saving in secret. Every paycheck, I put away half. I picked up night shifts and weekend jobs, skipped sleep, skipped meals, and slowly began building a financial wall between me and my family. I stopped leaving documents around the house. Started locking my bedroom door. Haley got married the next spring. It was a huge affair. White roses, crystal chandeliers, custom invitations with gold foil lettering. The whole thing screamed money. I assumed her fiancé's family was rich. Then I overheard my mom talking on the phone late one night while I passed by the kitchen. Yes, it was all from that third loan, she whispered. Well, Tyler doesn't really need a wedding. He's not even dating anyone. I stood there in the dark, fists clenched so hard my nails left crescent moons in my palms. I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not then. If I said something, I might actually lose it. So I swallowed it again. Quietly. For now. At Haley's wedding, I played my part. I smiled for photos, gave a polite toast, and watched my parents beam with pride. I listened to guests compliment the family. I watched my dad cry during the father-daughter dance. And I wondered if they even saw me anymore, or if I was just a walking social security number to them. After the wedding, things got colder. I spent less time at home, more at work. I applied for a second apartment using a roommate's name, paid cash, and moved out without telling anyone. When my mom called the next morning and found my room empty, she left 6 voicemails in a row. Tyler, where are you? Tyler, this isn't funny. Tyler, come home now. We're your family. I never returned the calls. I texted Kyle once. Tell mom and dad I'm fine. Just needed space. I didn't block them. I wanted them to see. Every time I got a promotion, every time I paid off a credit card someone else had opened, I posted it. Quietly. Not bragging. Just leaving breadcrumbs. Letting them know I wasn't gone. I was just done. But they weren't done with me. A year later, I checked my credit report again. A new credit card had been opened under my name. For $1,800 charged to it in less than 3 months. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. This time, I didn't ask. I went straight to the bank, flagged the fraud, closed the account, and filed a police report. And for the first time, I included names. Scott and Denise Harper. Relationship, parents. I didn't tell them. Not yet. I waited. I wanted them to hear from someone else first. And they did. I came home from work a few days later to find Dad waiting outside my apartment building. He looked older than I remembered. Gray in his beard. Wrinkles in his forehead. He stood when he saw me and started talking before I even reached him. You called the cops on your own family? I shrugged. Wasn't personal. Just protecting my identity. That's your mother you're accusing. No, I said calmly. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. The account was opened from your IP address. Her voice is on the verification call. I heard the audio. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. We needed help, Tyler. You always need help, I said. And I'm always the one paying for it. We raised you, he snapped. No, I said. You used me. Big difference. He left after that. Furious. Said I was being cold. Said I was abandoning the people who loved me. And maybe, in some twisted way, they did love me. But they loved me like an ATM. Like a tool. Like a safety net. Not like a son. It's been almost 2 years since that day. I've moved twice, changed numbers, even legally altered parts of my name. My credit is almost clean now. I own my car outright. I work in logistics for a major trucking company and do freelance auto repair on the side. I don't owe anyone anything. Not a cent. But then last month, the doorbell rang. And when I opened it, I saw them. Mom. Dad. Both thinner, older. Tired. They looked like the wind could blow them over. Tyler, Mom whispered. Her eyes were red. We didn't know where else to go. Dad cleared his throat. The house is in foreclosure. We've got 60 days. We need help. I let them talk. Let them explain the medical bills, the late payments, the desperate borrowing. I nodded, patient, while they laid out the sob story. And when they were done, I just smiled. Funny, I said. I could help. But you taught me not to. Then I closed the door. And that's not even the end. Because what they did after that, that's when things really got crazy. I wish I could say slamming that door was the end of it. That everything after was peaceful. That they took the hint and left me to my life. But if there's one thing I've learned about people like my parents, it's that they don't understand boundaries. Not when it comes to what they believe they're entitled to. Especially not when it comes to me. For about a week after I turned them away, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't settle, just hovers. I tried to convince myself it was over. That maybe they were finally realizing I wasn't the same kid who used to apologize for things I didn't do. I went to work, hit the gym, stayed busy. But in the back of my mind, I could feel it brewing. Then came the letter. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't even sent through the mail. It was hand-delivered, wedged into my apartment mailbox without a stamp. Folded neatly, typed, and signed. You owe us everything. We gave you life, food, shelter. This attitude of superiority, it's disgusting. You're not better than us, Tyler. And when we lose the house, Just know it'll be your fault. Not ours. Yours. I read it twice. Then again. It wasn't even angry. It was cold. Calculated. Like someone had written it while sipping coffee and feeling nothing at all. That scared me more than if it had been some rant in red ink. Because it meant they believed it. Every word. They truly thought I owed them my life. That night, I sat on my bed for hours, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in slow circles. I thought about how far I'd come. About how hard it had been to claw my way back from the hole they threw me into. About the nights I'd come home with $4 in my bank account and a fridge full of nothing. About the relationships I'd ruined by constantly working, by not having the energy to be present. About the birthday I spent alone eating instant noodles while Mom posted photos of Haley's baby shower online with a cake that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I hadn't hit rock bottom when they stole my credit. I hadn't even hit it when they took my car. The truth is, I didn't have a rock bottom. I had a slow, quiet collapse. 1,000 small humiliations. A constant, gnawing sense that I didn't matter. Not to them. Not to anyone. But somewhere in the middle of that collapse, I started building something. The first brick was honesty. I stopped lying to myself about who they were. I stopped excusing it, justifying it, pretending it would get better if I just worked harder or stayed quiet long enough. The second brick was distance. Real distance. Not just moving out, but cutting emotional ties. No more looking for their approval. No more hoping for an apology that would never come. And the third brick? That was mine. I stopped doing things because I had to. I started doing them because I wanted to. I signed up for night classes in logistics management. Slept 4 hours a night. Lived off caffeine and willpower. Took a promotion at work that paid less per hour but came with a path. One that didn't end with me under someone's thumb forever. It was hard. I won't lie. There were weeks I didn't think I'd make it. Weeks where I'd sit in the dark with my phone off, just tired in my bones. But slowly, something shifted. I paid off another card. Got approved for a lease in my own name. My boss pulled me into his office one morning and said, "You've got a mind for this. Ever think about running your own team?" That night, I cried for the first time in years. Not because I was sad. Because someone finally saw me for what I could be, not just what I'd survived. Around that same time, I stopped checking my parents' Facebook profiles. I didn't need to see the pity posts or the vague updates about someone in the family who turned their back on us. I was done playing the villain in their story. And just when I thought they'd finally let go, I got a call from Haley. I almost didn't answer. But some part of me, the part that still remembered teaching her how to ride a bike in our cracked driveway, picked up. "Tyler." Her voice was tight, like she was holding something back. "Can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "I don't know. Can we?" There was a pause. "I'm not here to argue. I wanted to say I'm sorry." I didn't respond. I didn't know how bad it got. I don't know what I thought. That you'd be fine, I guess. That you always land on your feet. Because I had to. I said, quieter than I meant to. Because no one else would catch me. "I know," she whispered. "I know that now. Mom and Dad, they're losing everything. And part of me, God, I feel awful even saying this, but part of me thinks they deserve it." "They do," I said. She sighed. "I just didn't want you to think I was like them." I let that hang in the air. I didn't know if I believed her, but I could hear something in her voice, something raw, something I recognized. The sound of someone waking up. "I need time," I said finally. "Okay." We hung up. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel worse. Just still. But that call was the beginning of something. A few days later, I got a LinkedIn message from a recruiter. Logistics coordinator position. Full benefits. Remote flexibility. Salary double what I was making. I thought it was a scam. Almost ignored it. But I checked the company. It was real. I sent in my resume that night. Got an interview 3 days later. And when they offered me the job, I stared at the email for a long, long time. Because in that moment, I realized something. I'd made it. Not just financially. Not just professionally. I'd made it out. Out of the guilt. Out of the cycles. Out of the belief that my worth was tied to how much I could endure. I accepted the job. Signed the papers. Sent in my resignation at work, and my boss actually hugged me. "You were one of the best I've had," he said. "Go do something amazing." I did. I moved to a better apartment. One with a balcony and a washer/dryer that didn't sound like a rocket launch. I bought a couch that wasn't secondhand. I went on a real vacation, just 3 days in a cabin up north. No cell service, just trees and silence. And for the first time in my adult life, I breathed without a weight on my chest. But just when I thought the past had finally let go of me, it grabbed back. A letter arrived. This one was official. Cream envelope, courthouse seal. A civil suit, filed by Scott and Denise Harper, claiming I owed them financial support, that I had benefited from living under their roof for years and now had an adult obligation to contribute to their well-being, citing some obscure state code about filial responsibility. I sat on my new couch, hands trembling, and read the letter 3 times. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. They were suing me. Suing me. After everything they'd taken. After everything they'd done. They were still trying to take more. That was the real turning point. Not the loans. Not the car. Not even the letter shoved in my mailbox. This was war. And I was done playing nice. I didn't respond to the letter right away. I let it sit on my kitchen counter, unopened except for that first read. Every morning, I'd pass it while pouring my coffee. Every night, I'd glance at it as I set my keys down. Like a silent dare. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. But I wasn't rushing into anything either. I wanted to feel the weight of it. To remember that this wasn't some petty drama. My parents were trying to legally extract money from me, after everything they'd stolen. They'd taken my credit, my name, my peace of mind, and now they wanted my consent to keep draining me. That wasn't going to happen. I let 2 days pass. 3. On the 4th day, I emailed my lawyer. Technically, he wasn't my lawyer. He was a guy named Marcus I'd met during a workshop on identity theft recovery 2 years earlier, when I was still dealing with the fallout of the loans. He'd spoken plainly, had a dry sense of humor, and stuck around after the session to answer my questions. We kept in touch. I'd emailed him maybe twice since. But now I needed him. I forwarded the suit to him, along with a short message. Looks like my parents are trying to sue me for not being a better ATM. Thoughts? He called me 10 minutes later. This is absurd, he said, laughing into the phone. Filial responsibility statutes are rarely enforced, especially in Indiana. And even when they are, they usually apply to cases where the parent is incapacitated and the child is both financially capable and somehow morally responsible. Well, I said, I am financially capable now. Yeah, Marcus replied. But morally? After they stole your identity, racked up debt in your name, and tanked your credit before you could legally drink? I think we're good. I want to fight it, I said. But not just that. I want to expose them. I want a paper trail. I want it all documented. I don't want them just embarrassed. I want them boxed in. No more chances to play the victim. There was a pause. You're serious. I've never been more serious. Another pause. Then let's talk strategy. And just like that, the setup began. The first thing Marcus did was help me file a countersuit. It wasn't just a defensive move, it was aggressive. We gathered all the documentation, the fraudulent loans, the credit card statements, the repossession report, the police report I'd filed years ago. We pulled my credit history from age 18 onward, annotated every line that didn't belong. We requested recorded customer service calls from banks that still had them on file, ones where my mother's voice could be heard, pretending to be me. Your parents are going to claim they did it for your benefit, Marcus warned. That they were just helping you. That you knew and agreed. We need to prove malicious intent. A pattern. Oh, I said, there's a pattern. And I had proof. The letter. The one they left in my mailbox. The emotional blackmail disguised as entitlement. I'd scanned it the day it arrived, even though it made my skin crawl. I sent it to Marcus. This alone doesn't prove identity theft, he said. But combined with the loans and the police report, it paints a picture. What's next? I asked. Discovery. We send them a formal notice. If they want to pursue this, they'll have to hand over financial records, communication logs, all of it. Good, I said. Let's make them dig their own hole. He laughed. You really are your own man now. I didn't reply to that, but it stayed with me. While Marcus got the legal wheels turning, I started my own parallel plan. Reputation. See, the thing about my parents is that they cared what people thought. Image was everything. Church potlucks, neighborhood barbecues, Haley's baby announcements on Facebook. They curated a version of our family that looked so wholesome you could slap it on a cereal box. I was the black sheep, the one who moved away and stopped calling, who forgot where he came from. I hadn't spoken to most of our extended family in years, not because I didn't want to, but because every conversation somehow got filtered through mom and dad. They controlled the narrative. Time to change that. I started reaching out. Not with rage. Not with accusations. Just facts. I called my Uncle Tom, Dad's older brother, a man I hadn't spoken to since I was 19. We made small talk for a while before I gently steered the conversation. Did you know Mom and Dad took out loans in my name? He paused. What? No. What are you talking about? So I told him. Not all the messy emotional stuff. Just the numbers. The fraud. The debt. I told him about the repossession, the lawsuits, the letter. By the end, he was silent. Why didn't you say anything sooner? He finally asked. I thought I had to protect them, I said. But now, I just want the truth out there. I'm not looking for pity. I just don't want to be the villain in their version anymore. He didn't say much after that. But 3 days later, Haley texted me. Did you talk to Uncle Tom? Mom's freaking out. I didn't respond. I kept going. Aunt Linda, Cousin Rachel, even Pastor Greg from our old church. Each time, I kept it factual, calm. And each time, I could feel the tide shifting. People started seeing the cracks in the image. Whispers started. Texts flew. And my parents? They panicked. The legal response came a week later, a half-hearted request to settle quietly, accompanied by a vague denial of wrongdoing. Marcus and I laughed over it. They're hoping you'll fold, he said. They don't know me anymore. At the same time, I was preparing another layer of the plan, one they wouldn't see coming. Media. Not TMZ, obviously, but local papers. One in particular, the Fort Wayne Sentinel. They had a Real People, Real Stories section, a column that featured identity theft victims and financial abuse survivors. I'd read it before. Quiet, powerful stories. I emailed the editor. Told her I had one of my own. She called me the next day. Are you okay with your name being public? She asked. This could blow back on you. I thought about that. The old me would have hesitated, would have worried about making waves. But the new me? I want it out there, I said. Every word. We set up an interview. I gave her everything. Documents, letters, emails, quotes. She fact-checked, interviewed Marcus, even asked Haley for comment. Haley declined, but texted me privately that she supported me. I'm not ready to speak out, she said. But I'm not against you. Just be careful. I thanked her and waited. The article dropped on a Monday morning. The headline was simple. He was just 19 when his parents stole his identity. Now he's fighting back. It was fair, balanced, but it didn't pull punches. It detailed the loans, the fraud, the emotional toll. And it named names because I gave permission. That afternoon, I got 50 messages. Some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some from strangers. A few were survivors of similar abuse. One woman wrote, I thought I was the only one. My father did the same thing to me. Thank you for sharing. But the one that stood out? A voicemail from my father. No hello. No greeting. Just this. You're destroying this family. For what? A few bucks? Pride? You think the world's going to love you now? They won't. You'll always be ours. I saved the voicemail. Then I sent it to Marcus. Admissible? I asked. Oh, absolutely, he replied. By the end of that week, the tone of the lawsuit shifted. Their lawyer, someone they probably found through a Google ad, filed a motion to dismiss their own suit. But it was too late. Because my countersuit? That was still on. And it was gaining traction. They didn't show up to the hearing. Marcus had warned me that might happen. People like them? They're great at making threats, but not so great at following through when the spotlight's pointed at them. Still, I had to see it for myself. I sat in that quiet courthouse room, arms crossed, heart steady, and watched the judge call out Scott and Denise Harper twice before sighing and turning to Marcus and me. Well, he said, that simplifies things. We won by default judgment. A clean, satisfying slam of the gavel. Everything we'd filed, the documented identity theft, the illegal use of my social security number, the fraudulent loans, the emotional and financial damage, it was all entered into the record. They had 30 days to respond before enforcement would begin. Garnishment, liens, asset seizure. They didn't respond. Not even when they got served at what was left of their house, a rundown place with brown grass, a sun-bleached for sale sign, and 3 boarded windows. I didn't need to be there to picture it. I'd driven past once. Just once. I saw my dad sitting on the porch, hunched, staring at nothing. Mom wasn't there. According to Haley, she'd started staying with a friend after the article dropped. She's embarrassed, Haley told me. Won't even go to church. People ask too many questions. She should be embarrassed. I replied. That's called consequence. I know, Haley said softly. I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm just letting you know. 3 weeks after the judgment, Marcus and I filed the final papers. Garnishment on their remaining savings account, which held just under $6,000. Not enough to pay back what they owed, but enough to make them feel it. Enough to matter. The bank froze the funds within 48 hours. That's when the calls started again. Blocked numbers. Strange voicemails. Mom crying. Dad angry. One message stood out. Dad's voice, cold and sharp. You're destroying your own blood over money. You think this makes you powerful? You're just a bitter child with a lawyer. I saved it. Forwarded it to Marcus. Then I turned off my voicemail completely. But revenge isn't about rage. Not the real kind. It's not shouting or smashing things or seeing them beg. It's knowing, really knowing, that you've outgrown them. That they can't hurt you anymore. That you've built something they can't reach. Still, that didn't stop them from trying one last time. A month after the funds were frozen, I came home from work to find a letter taped to my apartment door. Sloppy handwriting. Torn notebook paper. You've made your point. We get it. You win. But you need to stop. We're still your parents. Families move on. Haley thinks you've gone too far. Please stop before you make this worse. I stared at that line. Haley thinks you've gone too far. For a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the first ring. Tyler, I got a letter taped to my door. You said that. What? She paused. No, I didn't say that. Are you serious? I'm looking at it right now. Her voice dropped. I swear on everything, Tyler. I never said that. I haven't even seen them in a week. I believed her. And something inside me snapped clean. Because even now, even in the final moments, they were still trying to triangulate. Still trying to turn the only sibling I had left into a weapon. Still reaching for anything they could twist. So I made one last move. I wrote a letter. Not to them, to everyone else. I posted it on social media. A public update. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just clear. Some of you have asked why I went public. Why I sued my parents. Why I didn't let it go. Here's why. They stole from me. For years. Not just money, but time, peace, opportunity. They used my name to fund their wants and ignored my needs. They never apologized. Never made it right. I tried silence. It didn't work. I tried distance. That didn't work either. So I chose truth. If that makes me a villain in their story, so be it. I'm proud of the man I've become, because I built him without their help. This chapter is closed. Don't ask me to reopen it. I logged out after posting it. Let the ripples hit without watching. 2 days later, Haley sent me a screenshot. The family group chat, which I hadn't been part of for years, was blowing up. A few relatives defended me. Some stayed quiet. One aunt said I should have kept it private. Haley replied, they didn't keep their abuse private. Tyler has every right. That night, I slept with my phone off for the first time in years. No buzzing. No guilt. No waiting for a shoe to drop. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a decade. Peace. Haley and I started talking more after that. Slowly. Cautiously. We didn't pretend the past didn't exist, but we didn't let it own us either. She told me she was thinking about therapy. About what she'd ignored, what she'd accepted as normal. I'm not proud of how I stood by, she said once, during a long walk in the park. But watching you stand up for yourself, it's made me rethink everything. I'm not perfect, I said. I was angry. Still am, sometimes. You earned that anger, she replied. Just don't let it be the only thing that drives you. I didn't. I made space for other things. Laughter, sleep, weekend trips, cooking for myself without counting calories or cost. I dated again, slowly, carefully. Let someone see the version of me I'd fought to become. As for my parents, last I heard, they moved out of the house just before foreclosure finalized. Dad got a part-time job somewhere out of town. Mom stopped posting on Facebook. They went quiet. Not because they found peace, but because they finally ran out of stories to tell. They weren't the victims anymore. They were just names on a court record. And I was the one who walked away clean. Not bitter. Not broken. Just free. And that was the first thing they taught me that I actually wanted to remember. The thing about family gatherings is that everyone pretends they're harmless until someone decides to say the quiet part out loud. For me, that moment came over Eggs Benedict and lukewarm coffee, with my fork halfway to my mouth and my father's voice cutting through the table like he'd been rehearsing the line for weeks. My name is Alexander, I'm 29, And that brunch was the first time I realized my family didn't just see me as the responsible one. They saw me as a resource. I should probably explain the setup before I get into what was said, because context matters. In my family, there's always been a clear hierarchy, even if no one ever admitted it. My older sister, Marissa, is the centerpiece. She's 34, married, 2 kids under 6, suburban house, minivan. The whole picture people like to point at and say, she's doing life right. I'm the younger one who never followed the script. I didn't get married young, I don't have kids, and I chose a career that involved moving cities, taking risks, and saying no to things that didn't make sense for me. To my parents, that translated into one simple label: flexible. For as long as I can remember, flexibility meant I was the one expected to adjust. If Marissa needed help moving, I was the one with the free weekend. If the kids needed watching, I was the one who didn't have plans. If money was tight for her, the conversation always drifted in my direction with phrases like, well, Alex is good with saving, or Alex doesn't really need much. It was never said outright that my needs mattered less. It was implied, over and over, until it became the air we all breathed. I'm not reckless with money. I grew up watching my parents stress about bills, hearing arguments late at night about credit cards and repairs and unexpected expenses. When I started working, I promised myself I wouldn't live like that. I saved aggressively. I skipped trips. I drove the same car long after it stopped being impressive. By 29, I had built a savings account that gave me peace of mind. Not luxury. Peace. That's something I never talked about at family events, because money has a way of turning conversations sour fast. The brunch was supposed to be simple. Holiday weekend, nothing fancy. My parents' house, the big dining table, a spread that looked nicer than it tasted. My mom was fussing over plates. My dad was already on his second cup of coffee. Marissa was wrangling her kids while her husband scrolled on his phone, half present. The usual. I remember thinking it felt almost normal. Comfortable, even. That should have been my first warning. The conversation started out harmless enough. Small talk. Work updates. My dad asked me how things were going at my job, and I gave the standard answer. Busy, stable, nothing dramatic. That was always safe. The more vague I was, the less attention lingered on me. Marissa chimed in about daycare costs, about how everything was getting more expensive, about how hard it was to plan for the future when kids outgrow things every 6 months. Everyone nodded sympathetically. I did too. I wasn't heartless. I knew raising kids wasn't easy. Then my dad laughed, this short, knowing chuckle, and said something like, well, at least Alex doesn't have to worry about any of that. It was said casually, like a joke, but the table shifted just a little. I felt it before I fully registered it. I smiled politely, the way I always did, and said, different worries, I guess. That should have been the end of it. It never is. Marissa sighed dramatically and said, must be nice, honestly, to only have to think about yourself. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. She was buttering toast, eyes on her plate, but the words landed exactly where she aimed them. My mom made a small noise, half agreement, half concern, and my dad leaned back in his chair like he was settling in for a longer thought. You know, he said, tapping his mug with his finger, this is something your mother and I have talked about. That phrase alone made my stomach tighten. Anytime my parents framed something as a discussion they'd had privately, it meant a decision had already been made. Marissa has responsibilities. Real ones. Kids, a household. You've got options. He said options the way someone says spare change. I remember the room going quiet in that particular way where you can hear the hum of the refrigerator in the next room. Even the kids paused, sensing something had shifted. My dad wasn't looking at me yet. He was looking at the table, at his hands, as if he were laying out a reasonable argument step by step. You've always been good with money, Alex. Disciplined. And your sister, she could really use a safety net right now, just until things stabilize. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I asked carefully, what are you saying? He finally looked at me then, and his expression was calm. Too calm. I'm saying it makes sense for family to help family. You have savings. Marissa needs support. It's not like you're planning to buy a house tomorrow or anything. Marissa laughed at that. Actually laughed. A short burst, like it was absurd to imagine me needing my own money. Someone else at the table laughed too. I'm not even sure who it was. It all blurred together in that moment, the sound hitting harder than the words themselves. I glanced at my mom, expecting her to step in, to soften it, to say something like, "We're just talking," or "No one is forcing anything." Instead, she pressed her lips together and said, "It wouldn't be forever, honey. And you don't even notice the money just sitting there." That's when it clicked. This wasn't a suggestion. This was an expectation they'd already justified to themselves. In their minds, my savings weren't really mine. They were unassigned resources waiting to be redirected to where they felt more deserved. I felt a mix of emotions hit me all at once. Anger, yes, but also something colder. A familiar disappointment that settled deep in my chest. I'd been here before, just not this openly. All the little moments over the years suddenly lined up, like puzzle pieces finally forming a picture I didn't want to see. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my fork down. I did something that surprised even me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My dad frowned. "What are you doing?" I unlocked the screen, my hands steady despite the way my heart was pounding. "I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same money," I said. "Because if we are, then I think everyone deserves to know where it actually went." The table went dead silent. Marissa's smile faded. My mom's eyes flicked from me to my phone and back again. My dad opened his mouth, probably to tell me this wasn't the time or the place, but someone else let out a nervous laugh, like they thought I was joking. I wasn't. I turned the phone so the screen faced the table, my thumb hovering over the app, and asked, calmly, "Is now a good time to show everyone?" The laugh died quickly. That awkward, half-second chuckle that people make when they think something is a joke, but aren't sure anymore. It left behind a thick silence that pressed against my ears. My dad leaned forward slightly, his brows knitting together in that familiar way he used whenever he felt challenged. Not angry yet. More like confused that the script wasn't being followed. "Alex," he said, lowering his voice as if volume alone could control the situation, "put the phone away. This isn't necessary." That sentence flipped something inside me. Not because he was wrong, but because he was afraid. Afraid of whatever I was about to show, or at least afraid of losing control of the narrative he'd been crafting for years. I looked around the table. My mom was staring at her hands. Marissa's jaw was tight, her fingers gripping her coffee mug like it had personally offended her. Her husband finally looked up from his phone, sensing drama the way some people smell smoke. I didn't put the phone away. Necessary for who? I asked. I kept my tone even, almost polite. Inside, though, my chest felt like it was being compressed. Because I'm being told my savings are basically communal property now. I think clarity is necessary. My mom finally spoke, her voice thin. "You're taking this the wrong way. No one is saying that." My dad shook his head. "You're being dramatic. We're talking about helping your sister. Temporarily." Marissa scoffed. "Wow. So now we're villains for asking for help? Must be nice to sit on money and act like you're above everyone." That did it. That casual cruelty. The assumption that I'd been hoarding wealth out of selfishness, that my restraint was some kind of moral failing. I felt my throat tighten, but I pushed through it. "I'm not above anyone," I said. "I'm just tired of being volunteered." That word hung in the air. Volunteered. Because that's what it always was. No one ever asked me. They decided, then framed it as generosity. My dad exhaled sharply. "You always do this. Turn things into some big principle argument." "No," I said quietly. "I usually don't. That's the problem." I tapped my phone, opening my banking app. I didn't shove it in anyone's face. I just held it up, angled enough that people closest could see the numbers, the transfers, the dates. My mom's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She recognized them before anyone else did. "What is that?" she asked. "Those are withdrawals," I said. "Over the past year." Marissa leaned forward now, curiosity edging out irritation. So, I continued, scrolling slowly, deliberately. "This is what's left of the savings everyone thinks I should hand over." My dad frowned. "That doesn't look right." "It is," I said, "because a lot of it isn't there anymore." The table shifted again. Chairs creaked. Someone cleared their throat. My brother-in-law finally put his phone face down, eyes flicking between me and Marissa. My mom whispered, "Alex, where did it go?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to say it, but because once I did, there was no rewinding. I'd spent months biting my tongue, convincing myself that keeping the peace was worth swallowing my resentment. In that moment, I realized peace built on silence wasn't peace at all. It was surrender. Some of it went where it was supposed to, I said. Emergency fund. Investments. Normal stuff. I paused, then added. And some of it went to things I never agreed to. My dad's face hardened. What are you implying? I looked directly at Marissa. Do you want to explain, or should I? Her eyes flashed. Explain what? The credit card charges, I said. The transfers. The ones labeled temporary that never came back. My mom gasped softly. Marissa? Marissa laughed, sharp and defensive. Oh my God. Are you seriously doing this right now? You helped us. You said you would. I shook my head. No. I said I'd cover one medical bill. One. Because you called me crying and said you were short and scared. That was help, she snapped. Family helps. Family doesn't keep helping themselves, I said. Family doesn't log into someone else's account without telling them. The words landed like a dropped plate. My dad stood up halfway, then sat back down, as if his body couldn't decide what to do. Logged into your account? That's ridiculous. I turned the phone toward him now, scrolling to the security log. You want to tell me why there are multiple logins from Marissa's IP address? Or why my old password suddenly stopped working last winter? The room exploded into overlapping voices. That's not what it looks like. You're accusing your sister of stealing? This is insane. My mom's voice cut through, trembling. Marissa, tell me you didn't. Marissa's face had gone pale, but her posture was still defiant. I had permission. From who? No one asked it out loud, but we all knew the answer. My dad's silence was louder than anything else at the table. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at my mom. He stared at the table like if he focused hard enough, the wood grain would rearrange itself into an explanation. You told her? I asked him. You told her she could? He rubbed his temples. We were trying to solve a problem. By creating another one. I said. My voice shook now, despite my efforts. By deciding my money was the solution without even talking to me? My mom stood up. I didn't know about this. Marissa shot her a look. You knew we needed help. That's not the same thing, my mom said weakly. Marissa turned back to me, anger blazing now that the pretense was gone. You weren't using it. It was just sitting there. Meanwhile, I'm juggling kids and bills and a husband who works nonstop, and you're worried about numbers on a screen. I laughed then. I couldn't help it. It came out brittle. Those numbers are years of my life. Every weekend I didn't go out. Every risk I didn't take because I wanted security. You don't get to minimize that because it's inconvenient for you. Her husband finally spoke. Marissa, you said you handled this. She snapped her head toward him. Not now. But it was too late. The dam had cracked. My dad finally looked up, his expression tight, defensive. You're overreacting. We always planned to pay you back. When? I asked. Because the transfers kept coming. And no one said a word. Instead, I get told to hand over what's left because I have options. Silence again. Thicker this time. He didn't answer. I felt something inside me settle. Not relief. Not victory. Something heavier. The realization that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. A belief system where my role was fixed, regardless of how clearly I objected. I locked my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. I'm done talking about money today, I said. But don't pretend this is about helping family. This is about control. My dad scoffed. Don't be dramatic. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. You already crossed that line. As I walked toward the door, my mom called my name, panic in her voice. Marissa said something under her breath that I didn't catch, but the tone was sharp enough to sting anyway. I paused at the doorway, hand on the frame, and turned back. Just so we're clear, I said, meeting all their eyes one by one. This conversation isn't over. You just forced it to happen on my terms. No one followed me outside. No one stopped me. And as I stepped into the cold air, phone buzzing in my pocket with notifications I didn't look at yet, I realized the worst part wasn't what they'd taken. It was how easily they'd justified it, and how far they were willing to go once I stopped playing along. I didn't go home after that brunch. I drove until the houses blurred together and the familiar streets stopped feeling familiar. I remember pulling into a grocery store parking lot, sitting there with the engine off, just staring at the steering, like it might explain how my life had tilted so hard in the span of an hour. My phone kept vibrating in my pocket. I didn't look at it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to see which version of reality my family was going to present to me once they had time to regroup. When I finally did check, it was exactly what you'd expect. Missed calls from my mom. A long text from my dad that started with, "We need to talk like adults," and somehow managed to sound like a lecture and an accusation at the same time. A message from Marissa that was 3 sentences long and somehow said everything and nothing at once. She didn't apologize. She explained. About stress. About pressure. About how hard things had been for her. As if hardship automatically converted into entitlement. I went home that night and slept for maybe 2 hours. The rest of the time, I lay there replaying the conversation, hearing my dad's voice say options like it was a flaw, seeing Marissa's face when the truth finally cornered her. I kept thinking there would be some moment where I'd realize I misunderstood everything. That this was all some terrible miscommunication. That moment never came. The next morning, I checked my accounts properly. Not the quick glance I'd done at brunch, but a full audit. Every transaction, every login, every temporary transfer that never returned. The deeper I went, the worse it got. It wasn't just 1 or 2 emergencies. It was a pattern. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Just enough to stay under the radar. Just enough that I could convince myself I was imagining it. Seeing it all laid out in front of me made my hands shake. I called my bank. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't need to. I asked neutral questions. Changed passwords. Locked down access. Set alerts for everything. The representative was calm and professional, and that almost made it worse. Because to them, this was just a procedure. To me, it was proof that my family had crossed a line they could never uncross. When my mom finally got through to me later that day, I answered. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still hoped she'd say the right thing. She cried. A lot. She said she never meant for it to go this far. She said she thought my dad had talked to me. She said Marissa was under so much pressure and she didn't know how to say no to her. At one point, she said, "You know your sister doesn't mean harm." I stared at the wall and let her talk. When she finally paused, waiting for reassurance, I said quietly, "Intent doesn't undo impact." She didn't have a response to that. The weeks that followed were some of the loneliest I've ever had. Family group chats went silent, except for the occasional passive-aggressive message about how sad it was that money was tearing everyone apart. Invitations stopped coming. Holidays were discussed without me. I found out through a cousin's social media post that there'd been a small get-together I wasn't invited to because it would have been too tense. I wish I could say I stood tall through all of it. I didn't. There were days I questioned everything. Days I wondered if I really was being selfish. If maybe I should have just let it go. If losing some money was worth losing my family. Those thoughts hit hardest late at night, when the anger cooled and left behind something heavier. I hit a low point about a month after the brunch. Work was stressful, my sleep was garbage, and every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. One night, I sat on my couch scrolling through old photos, back when things felt easier, and I felt this crushing sense of grief. Not just for the money, for the version of my family I thought I had. That was the moment I realized something had to change. Not with them. With me. I started small. Therapy, for one. I'd always told myself I didn't need it, that I could think my way through things. Turns out, thinking was part of the problem. Talking to someone who had no stake in my family dynamics, who wasn't invested in protecting anyone's image, was uncomfortable and freeing at the same time. For the first time, I said things out loud without immediately softening them. I also took a hard look at my finances. Not with panic, but with intention. I restructured, adjusted timelines, set new goals. It hurt to acknowledge what had been taken, but it felt empowering to realize I was still standing. I wasn't ruined. I wasn't dependent on them. That mattered more than I expected. I poured myself into work, not in a burnout way, but in a focused, purposeful way. I said yes to projects I'd been hesitating on. I spoke up in meetings instead of shrinking. A few months later, that turned into a promotion I hadn't even realized I was being considered for. The raise wasn't life-changing, but the validation was. Someone saw my value without attaching conditions to it. Slowly, my confidence started to come back. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that doesn't need approval. Of course, my family noticed. They always do when you stop orbiting them. My mom started reaching out again, tentative, like she was testing the temperature. My dad sent a message saying he missed me, followed by a comment about how none of this needed to get so extreme. Marissa didn't reach out at all, which somehow said more than if she had. I didn't rush back. I didn't explain myself again. I let the distance exist. One evening, a few months later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was my brother-in-law. He sounded tired, hesitant. He asked if we could talk sometime. Just the two of us. He said there were things I should know. Things that had been bothering him for a while. I told him I'd think about it. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling that familiar tightening in my chest. Because I knew, deep down, that whatever he wanted to tell me wasn't going to make things simpler. It was going to confirm something I'd been circling around since that brunch. That the betrayal hadn't been a one-time lapse. It was part of something bigger. Something that was still unfolding, whether I wanted it to or not. And for the first time since everything blew up, I realized I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was standing at the edge of a truth that could change all of our lives once it came out. I didn't call my brother-in-law back right away. Not because I wasn't curious, but because I'd finally learned the value of not reacting on someone else's timeline. Old me would have jumped at the chance, desperate for answers, eager to fix things, or at least understand them. New me sat with the discomfort. I let the question hang. When I did agree to meet him, it wasn't dramatic. No secret location, no whispered voices. Just a quiet cafe on a weekday afternoon. Neutral ground. That mattered more than I realized at the time. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him. Tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. We ordered coffee and sat there for a moment in silence, the kind that's heavy but not awkward. Finally, he rubbed his hands together and said, "I don't really know how to start this without sounding disloyal." That word again. Loyal. Like the family was a team, and telling the truth was a foul. "Start wherever you want," I said. "I'm not here to drag anything out of you." He nodded, relieved. "Okay, then I'll just say it. What you found out. About the money? That's not even the whole story." I didn't interrupt. I didn't lean forward or widen my eyes. I just listened. He told me things slowly, haltingly, like he was testing each sentence before letting it fully exist. About debts I didn't know about. About loans taken out and shuffled around. About how my parents had quietly stepped in more than once, covering gaps, smoothing things over. And about how, when that stopped being enough, someone suggested there was another option. Someone responsible. Someone with savings. "You," he said quietly. I felt a cold calm settle over me. Not shock. Confirmation. "They framed it as temporary," he continued. "Like a bridge. They said you wouldn't even notice. That you'd understand if you knew how bad things were." "And did you?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not at first. I thought it was handled. Then I started seeing things that didn't add up. And when you walked out of that brunch, something clicked." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Why tell me now?" He hesitated. "Because it's getting worse. And because I don't want to be part of it anymore." That sentence stayed with me long after we left the cafe. Over the next few weeks, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't send dramatic messages or demand explanations. Instead, I did what I've always done best when things get unstable. I gathered information. I pulled credit reports. Not just mine. Public records too. Anything I could legally access without crossing lines. I spoke to my therapist about boundaries, about anger, about the difference between revenge and justice. She didn't tell me what to do. She just asked questions that forced me to be honest about my intentions. Was I trying to hurt them? Or was I trying to stop something? The answer surprised me. I wasn't interested in humiliating anyone. I was interested in ending the pattern. In making sure no one ever looked at me and saw an open account again. The more I learned, the clearer the shape of things became. This wasn't just favoritism. It was dependency. My parents had built their identity around being needed, especially by Marissa. And Marissa had learned that need translated into leverage. I was the variable they hadn't accounted for. The one who stepped out of the system instead of reinforcing it. That realization shifted something in me. I stopped feeling like the odd one out and started feeling like the only one who could see the machine for what it was. I started documenting everything. Not obsessively. Methodically. Dates. Conversations. Screenshots. I kept it all in one place, backed up, organized. Not because I planned to unleash it all at once, but because I wanted control over the narrative for once. At the same time, I worked on strengthening my own position. I updated my will, named beneficiaries who weren't family, set up additional safeguards on my accounts, had uncomfortable but necessary conversations with a lawyer about options, hypotheticals, and worst-case scenarios. Just in case. Ironically, that's when the tone from my family shifted. My mom started sending messages that were almost normal, asking how work was, commenting on the weather. My dad suggested we grab lunch sometime, just the two of us, like old times. Marissa finally reached out, her message short and carefully worded. She said she missed me. She said she hated how things had turned out. She didn't say sorry. That was when I knew something was coming. I agreed to lunch with my dad. I picked the place. Neutral, public, easy exit. He spent the first 20 minutes talking about anything but the issue. Sports, traffic, a neighbor's renovation. When he finally circled back, it was with a sigh and a shake of his head. Families go through rough patches, he said. This doesn't have to define us. I nodded. Agreed. He seemed encouraged by that. Your sister's under a lot of stress. We all are. It would mean a lot if we could put this behind us. And how do you suggest we do that? I asked. He hesitated. By letting things go. There it was. The unspoken rule made explicit. I said calmly. I've let go of the expectation that I'll be treated fairly. His expression tightened. That's not what I meant. I know, I said. That's the problem. After that lunch, things escalated quickly. Subtle pressure at first, then not so subtle. Comments about how family was worried about me. How people didn't understand why I was being so distant. How it looked. I stopped responding. Behind the scenes, though, pieces were moving. My brother-in-law checked in occasionally, careful not to give too much away over text. A cousin reached out, confused, asking why there were rumors that I'd abandoned the family over money. I didn't correct her. I just listened. Because I was waiting for the moment when their need for control would outweigh their desire to keep things quiet. Waiting for the ask that would cross the line again, but this time, on record. That moment came in the form of an invitation. A family gathering, bigger than usual, framed as a chance to clear the air. Neutral mediator. Everyone present. My mom emphasized how important it was that I come. How much it would mean to her. I read the message twice, then once more. They wanted closure. I smiled to myself, phone resting in my hand, feeling that steady calm that only comes when you're done being reactive. Because what they didn't realize was that I wasn't walking into that gathering to defend myself. I was walking in prepared. Prepared with information. Prepared with boundaries. Prepared with the knowledge that once certain truths are spoken out loud, they can't be gathered back up and tucked away. I replied simply, I'll be there. The night before the gathering, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I was excited, and definitely not because I was optimistic. It was because I finally knew where I stood. There's a strange peace that comes with certainty, even when that certainty involves confrontation. Especially then. The gathering was at my parents' house again. Same table, same chairs, same carefully arranged illusion of normalcy. When I arrived, everyone was already there. My parents, Marissa and her husband, a few cousins, an aunt who always pretended not to notice tension, and a family friend my mom had invited specifically because she thought a neutral presence would keep things civil. I greeted everyone politely, calm, almost detached. If anyone expected me to come in defensive or angry, they were disappointed. My dad cleared his throat once we were seated. Thank you all for coming. We're here because family matters, and misunderstandings have been allowed to grow. Misunderstandings. I almost laughed. He gestured toward me. Alexander has felt hurt. We all have. But tonight is about honesty. I nodded. I agree. That seemed to surprise him. Marissa spoke next, her voice measured, rehearsed. I just want to say I never meant for things to spiral like this. I thought we were helping each other. That's what families do. I waited. Let the silence stretch. People shifted uncomfortably. You're right, I said finally. Families help each other. But help requires consent. And honesty. My dad frowned. Alex, let's not rehash. I'm not, I said. I'm finishing it. I reached into my bag and set a folder on the table. No dramatic slam. Just placed it there, neat and deliberate. What's that? My aunt asked. Documentation, I said. Everything I needed to understand what actually happened. Marissa stiffened. I opened the folder and slid a few pages forward. This is a summary of unauthorized account access over the last 18 months. Dates, amounts, locations. My mom's face drained of color. Unauthorized. Yes, I said calmly. Unauthorized. My dad leaned forward. We already talked about this. It wasn't theft. It was temporary support. I turned to him. Then you won't mind explaining why my bank flagged it as fraud. The room went silent. My brother-in-law swallowed hard. I continued, voice steady. Or why there were attempts to reset my passwords without my knowledge. Or why funds were transferred to cover expenses that had nothing to do with emergencies. Marissa snapped. You're exaggerating. I looked at her. You charged my account to pay off a credit card used for a vacation. You transferred money labeled school supplies that went toward a car payment. And when that wasn't enough, you asked Dad to pressure me into handing over what was left. My dad's voice rose. That's enough. No, I said, still calm. This is the part where it's actually enough. I turned to the rest of the table. I didn't come here to shame anyone. I came here to make something clear. I know exactly what happened. I know who knew. And I know who benefited. My mom started crying. Quietly. Genuinely. Marissa stood up. So what? You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry you feel hurt. I met her eyes. I don't want your apology. That caught her off guard. I want accountability. My dad scoffed. You're blowing this out of proportion. I pulled out my phone and placed it next to the folder. I've already filed a report with my bank. I gave them everything. I didn't press charges immediately. I wanted to give the people involved a chance to come clean and make things right. My dad went rigid. You did what? I protected myself, I said. Something no one else here thought to do. My brother-in-law stood up slowly. I knew some of this, he said. But not all of it. Marissa turned on him. You're taking his side now. I'm taking reality's side, he said quietly. The fallout was immediate and messy. Voices overlapped. My mom begged us to stop. My dad accused me of tearing the family apart. Marissa cried, then yelled, then accused me of being selfish, vindictive, ungrateful. I didn't raise my voice once. When the noise finally died down, I spoke again. Here's what's going to happen. The money that was taken will be repaid. Not because I need it back. I've already adjusted, but because consequences matter. Marissa laughed bitterly. With what money? That's not my problem, I said. But it will be your responsibility. My dad stood up, furious. You would do this to your own family? I looked at him. You already did it to me. I slid one final paper across the table. This is a repayment agreement. Structured. Fair. It protects everyone. If it's honored, this stays civil. If not, the bank continues their process. No one spoke. My mom looked at the paper like it might explode. Marissa finally sat down, shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. For the first time, she looked less like the golden child and more like someone who'd run out of leverage. I stood up. I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm stepping back. There's a difference. As I walked toward the door, my dad called after me, voice cracking. So that's it. I turned. No. This is the beginning of honesty. Whether you choose it or not is up to you. I left without another word. In the weeks that followed, the family changed. Not magically. Not neatly. Marissa signed the agreement. The repayments started. Slow, strained, but real. My parents stopped trying to control the story once they realized I wasn't afraid of the truth being known. Some relationships didn't survive. Others redefined themselves. I stopped being the fallback, the backup plan, the option. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't known I was missing. Not revenge, respect. Because the most powerful moment wasn't when I exposed them. It was when I walked away knowing I'd finally chosen myself and never needed their permission to do it again.